Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 7th Service-Learning Researchers meeting. In this new edition, we have, as organizers, CLAYSS in partnership with the Ibero-American Service Learning Network, Rodríguez, that is celebrating its 20th anniversary of ongoing work in the region, as well as the Uniservitate program. We would like to thank the School of Dentistry of the University of Buenos Aires for hosting this meeting. We will celebrate research into the pedagogy of service learning. We would like to thank all collaborators that were part of the academic committee that evaluated all the papers that will be presented during this meeting. This meeting has been held since 2004, and it is an opportunity for exchanging advancements and in code that you received at the bottom of the agenda that you were given when coming to this meeting. Service learning and research have a mutual relationship to produce knowledge and active citizenship. Thank you for joining us. Now we will start with the formal sessions of this meeting. Pablo Alejandro Rodríguez, the Dean of the School of Dentistry of the University of Buenos Aires, is here with us, together with the Secretary of Youth Participation, other officials from the University of Buenos Aires, and María Nieves Tapia, who is the Director and Founder of CLAYSS. I'll give the floor first to the Dean of the School of Dentistry. Good morning to you all. We are really pleased to welcome you all for this activity here, all of you involved in research. Research is one of the mainstays of the university. Generating knowledge is very important for us, and conveying that knowledge to others is also very important. We are now facing times where we have people who try to diminish the importance of university work for the people. Having high-level researchers to support education activities at the university and in the society is extremely important. We are very happy to welcome you all here. Please make the most of this meeting and enjoy our facilities. We have worked to renovate them, so hopefully you will feel comfortable here. Once again, I'm very happy, and I thank you for being here. There are many activities that perhaps are not advertised too much. This may be the case here, but hopefully others will benefit from your work. So probably this will not hit the headlines in the newspapers, but you do a very important work for us to grow as a country. So thank you and welcome.
Bueno.
Good morning, everyone. I think that I know many of you. I think that we met in the past years in this same hall. I'm honored to say some opening remarks. I was not expecting to have to address you, but the president asked me to do that, so I would like to welcome you to my home. I am a dentist. I studied in the school, and as many of you, I'm passionate about service learning and educational social practices, as we call them here at the University of Buenos Aires. We always talk about this with the Tapia sisters. I have known them for some years. For those of you who are newcomers, let me tell you that this is a reform-oriented university. It is a university has undertaken a high commitment to serve society. For this university, this is not just a house where knowledge is produced. This knowledge is produced but also put at the service of society. This university and the different schools, 13 in total, in 2008 passed a resolution making in all programs a mandatory subject focused on social practices and social work. This translates into service learning practices, as you may call them in your own institutions. Of course, we can have a discussion about the terminology, but it doesn't matter. All of us are faculty, teachers, all of us have felt the calling to help others to produce knowledge and to make sure that the knowledge goes outside these houses and make a change in society. I run a university extension program that is an optional subject for students. I usually organize an extension trip that takes students to Santiago del Estero, a very humble and poor province. I have been doing this for 7 years. This year there will be 75 teachers and students that will travel to Anatuya in Santiago del Estero. Usually we were just 50, and we will try to talk and meet people who have never seen a dentist. I do this because this is an act of love, because I feel passionate about this, and because I believe that every student in public universities need to know what happens in other parts of the country. So it is very easy to do research when we have students in the same school every year. So we started using a different fluoride product in the last few years, different from what we used when you were young. So this kind of fluoride-based varnish can be applied under different conditions. And we realized that this created a significant change in the vocal cavities of and in the mouth of these children. So now in the city of Buenos Aires, law is being drafted, and all children have an application of fluoride-based varnish to reduce the rates of cavities. And there has been a significant drop in cavities and an improvement in vocal health. I'm always learning from this kind of meeting. There is always passionate people who are scholars. They do more academic work, so I'm always learning because I'm just a dentist, and I do this because I'm passionate about this. But I have seen that this has changed the lives of many people. So today we are going to talk about service learning and also follow-up of our programs, because just having one visit, one project, a one-time stop is very nice. You can have a nice video posted on social media, but we need to be able to continue with that work. If after 5 years we can see a change, then the municipal government or a provincial government or the federal government may allocate more resources to those programs in order to help society improve. I just wanted to say these few words. I wanted to welcome you. I want to thank you for being here. Those of you coming from abroad, please enjoy our city. Those of you who are already here in the city, well, take the chance to see friends, and this is a very nice school. Please feel comfortable, go along the corridors, and you will see students also dealing with patients. So I'm glad to take any questions later on, and thank you and welcome. Thank you so much, Jordi, Gustavo, and the Vice Dean, or the Dean, sorry. I'm going to be quite brief because due to the rain, we started a little bit late. Once again, welcome all to this meeting. I want to thank the University of Buenos Aires for letting us meet here. There is a hashtag that says Orgullo UBA, Pride UBA, and that is used to show our pride as Argentinians for having this publicly run university that is open to all kinds of students. Despite all difficulties, it is still one of the best ranked Latin American universities. So we are very proud of that, and specifically those of us in service learning, we feel very proud to see that you have these educational social practices, and you can name them as you wish. Almost in all 100 public universities in Argentina, service learning is carried out under a different name, and that's okay. What we acknowledge here is that no matter if we are coming from Australia, the Philippines, Africa, or Europe, no matter what name we use, if there is a solidarity-based action, a service component, when you have youth as leaders, and there is connection between that practice and knowledge, then we call it service learning, because if it has 4 legs and barks, it is a dog. So, thanks to the University of Buenos Aires for hosting this meeting again. Thanks to the School of Dentistry that has provided us with these wonderful facilities. And I want to thank you all, because we know that service learning is a new discipline in the field of pedagogy. And by nature, it is an interdisciplinary field, because dentists, agronomists, teachers, all of them may practice service learning. So I want to thank all of you, because although this is a young discipline, we are producing knowledge that makes this field more robust. We know that it is important to practice service. We also know that in the academic field, it is important to take our work seriously. And over decades, most of the research on service learning came from the North. And we are very happy to see that in this space, in this researchers' meeting that has been supported by the Redivas network, we can now have a horizontal conversation between the North and the South, between the East and the West. And now all of us can learn from our Asian colleagues, our African colleagues, our European colleagues, and our Latin American colleagues that have a lot to teach us. So thank you for helping us grow the field of service learning. Thank you for making it so strong. And I encourage you to increasingly show our serious work in this meeting and to continue helping others. Thank you and have a good meeting. I would like to thank this opening panel. We will start with the first panel. We will talk about challenges in service learning research. María Alejandra Herrero and Daniel Giorgetti will be speaking on this panel. María Alejandra Herrero is an agronomist. She has a degree in science and technology from the University of Buenos Aires, and she's a member of UBA-CLAYSS, former president. She has received an award for higher education in 2004. She is an agronomist and associated to the University of Buenos Aires. She works on environmental policies, water management, and she has edited and authored several books, the most recent one on environmental indicators for rural establishments. She's also an advisor for the development of environmental public policies and rural policies. Daniel Giorgetti has a degree in social sciences. He's a member of CLAYSS and he participates in the Uniservitate program. He's a researcher and faculty member of the University of Buenos Aires in Moreno and has participated in publications on the social movement, the worker movement, and youth participation. He has taken different positions in universities and also at the Ministry of Education of Argentina and in the province of Buenos Aires.
Good morning. Welcome to the Service-Learning Researchers meeting, the 7th meeting. The first thing I wanted to say is that we are starting a journey today that is just starting. It will never end. Let me sit. It will finish on Friday. Then you will see why I'm saying this. The first thing I wanted to remind you is why researchers meeting even started. I'm going just to read the bold letters to make it faster, but then you will have the slides available. They appear as a CLAYSS space to disseminate progress in the area of service learning. How? By promoting exchanges and learnings at all educational levels. And I want to emphasize this because this is a space where we become researchers, teachers at high school that present their experiences, and researchers from universities. What are the achievements that we intended to have when we started this journey? That was the dissemination of the works with different audiences of all kinds, and to make progress in the development of the research. What does this mean? Learning together, creating a learning space. And here we see that we also wanted the groups to grow together. And so these meetings also become a space for encounter. As I know that Nieves loves these timelines, this started, as Mateo said, in 2004. Those were conferences that were organized during a meeting at the San Andres University. Then a decision was made to create these meetings, as we know them today, where papers are presented with 3 sections initially that have been present all these years in all the meetings. A section, the first one, that is theoretical contributions to the concept of service learning in the context of the Ibero-Americans. Then the monitoring and evaluation of experiences with indicators, and then case studies and systematization of programs and practices. So meetings happened in 2012, 2015, 2017, 2019, and they all have the purpose of disseminating the meeting in a publication, that is a book available in CLAYSS webpage with all the long papers that were presented by you, in this case, and others in the previous meetings. In 2017 and 2019, there was a special appendix at the Writers' Journal with the abstracts of the papers. In 2023, the 6th meeting, they worked together with the Uniservitate program. So other purposes were added to the sections that were the contributions to the definition of service learning, as we had, and the incorporation of solidarity, fraternity, spirituality, and service learning. And then in monitoring and evaluation of institutional programs, the second one was incorporated, that is the design and follow-up of institutional policies to establish and promote service learning at institutions. And here we have This meeting, we still do not have the cover of the book, but all your papers will be published there. What happened? What has happened throughout these years? The blue bars there indicate the first section, that is the contributions that were never most of the works, but they came down as this idea of fraternity, spirituality, and service learning was incorporated there. They started growing again. Monitoring and evaluation was present in many of the papers. At some point, the star was to incorporate indicators. So this is proportionately to the total papers presented. And there's always case studies. This is something we give a lot of importance to. The number of works that is associated to the number of people that can attend, that has been varied. In the past meeting, in the sixth meeting, there were more papers, but we've always been between 60 and 100 papers presented. The origin of the works was strongly in blue, Latin America, well, the Ibero-Americans, and then the other colors that is increasing with your attendance. The achievements per section, here you see 16% for section 1, 35 for 2, 49% for section 3. I'd like to highlight some aspects that after reading the 60 papers presented, I would like to say that some things are strong, like big new approaches. Many moved from the mere implementation of institutional models to finding internal mechanisms for the sustainability of the programs, and that is evaluated. And this is not a minor thing. We are speaking of sustainability. Institutional networks appear among different programs of the institutions. That is no longer just the internal mechanism of the internal networks, but how to connect with others to have a better institutionalization in our own institutions. Reflections appear about the incorporation of knowledge from the community. Today, you're going to listen to a case from Africa about Ubuntu, an excellent work that leads us to that ecology of knowledge that we are going to cover tomorrow at the seminar as well. And then there are works on gender, the gender lens, things that had not been dealt with before in the meetings. Tensions and challenges appear for the achievement of, for applying it in public policies. This is very important in every area. I have attended others, and this is a struggle where we have to be truly engaged because it has to do with the sustainability of the programs in the long term. Emphasis is placed on institutional, local, and regional recognition, and as a requirement for the sustainment and promotion. I'm just mentioning objectives of some papers that I thought were big innovations. The others are all excellent, but some had this twist and this innovation. Also, the need for teacher training appears. CLAYSS always, I've been at CLAYSS from the beginning, has always highlighted the training of all teachers, and this appears again as a need in several papers. So we can rethink what requirements are there in this new request for training. Also work on the strength of the participatory diagnosis and the research action, participatory action processes. I know Daniel is going to mention something. How to organize priorities in the programs by organizing community claims, both general and specific. There's a very interesting work from India that I recommend that you read, because they also deal with the specific claims of specific communities, and based on that, they create their program. Spaces are generated for sustainable community partnerships and to transform them in a co-creation of knowledge and of materials that are necessary for the task. This idea of sustainability in the community, we're going to discuss this throughout the seminar in different moments. Who are we? Well, this year I would like to thank particularly all those that gave their time, their assistance, and their engagement to evaluate the works. As the organizer committee, I'd like to thank Enrique Ochoa, Agustina Camaño, that we worked as a team together. But all these evaluators also, thank you to all of them. And what next? Because I told you this was going to be a journey. Now you're going to have a program. Now Daniel is going to share this presentation with me and go into some details. But I had to invite you to the rest of the journey. There's going to be a research panel tomorrow afternoon at the conference and a workshop on Friday in Spanish. That is how to turn case studies into objects of research. So we keep learning together, and thank you again for being here. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to share, based on the experience we've been conducting both at CLAYSS and at the Universitate program. Many of you are also part of it. I'm going to share some reflections. I'm going to divide this into four sections. First, whether research is necessary. Wondering whether it's necessary. Amid so many tasks that occupy our time in our universities, in our education centers, sometimes it's difficult to find the value, the meaning. So in that sense, I would like to share with you that we see like different levels to find the opportunity and the need for research. On the one hand, the personal level. When you read the papers that are presented at the researchers' meetings, we see that behind the research, there's a true and strong and conscious commitment of each researcher, and even from the emotional perspective. And in that sense, we are convinced, in general, all of us here, of the profound sense and usefulness in the construction of the subjectivity of our students with the development of service learning projects. And that leads us to a strong commitment, a strong emotion, and I think it's important to highlight that, because without that, the driver for many of our works would be useless. Actually, right now, I'm thinking, when speaking about this emotion, I'm thinking of a couple of colleagues that are here today. They were invited to participate at the Universitate program, and they are two colleagues from Belém University, Ruba Eliath. They were going to attend here, but it's in the West Bank, and as you know, they couldn't make it today because of the difficulties they are going through. So I think that is part of the emotion. I consider that for all of us here, that is central. So first, we have that personal level. Without that, the rest would not be there. But then we are thinking of the impact. And whenever we have service learning experiences, we notice a very significant impact and a very important impact. It has to do with our goals, our evaluation, and, as in every project, with the systematization. Perhaps that is not enough to explain why we need to get funds and to have institutional support or have an office in our institution that supports this. So there's an institutional level that is important to consider. And for that, the research is useful. And sustainability doesn't have to do only with the financial part, which is a key part, but it's not only that, because actually many projects and many researches then are done almost without any funds. But it has to do with the institutionality, the way this has an impact on an institution, and they continue and they strengthen it, and how it allows us to transcend the experience, the epical experience sometimes of a teacher leading a project and then doing a small research. The other level is a global level. The international framework is a framework where we compete in a diverse environment. For instance, at universities, research is analyzed thoroughly, very carefully, and they have to fulfill certain requirements. So we should be able to validate that in order to obtain funds, to strengthen the institutionality in the academic, in the global academic field. And it's important to bear that in mind. So our research needs to be sound and strong when it comes to supporting even our emotional engagement. At the same time, there's an aspect of thinking of us academically. It has to do with the construction of knowledge, as was mentioned in the introduction. And this is central. We have the possibility to build knowledge that is not necessarily the same that is valued in academic fields and in certain reviews and certain journals. So it's important how to build knowledge and for that knowledge to be significant. Earlier this year at the Universitate program, we had a webinar where we had the great contribution of 3 colleagues, Professor Andy Furco, that couldn't make it to this meeting because of a personal situation, then Professor Boyana Cullum, and Professor Daniela Gargantini, who is here today. I'm also collecting some of their reflections by sharing these with you. And also, we should speak of thinking politically. Nothing is neutral in the world where we are, let alone at this time, where some values that we consider essential seem to be degraded or ignored, or they don't matter, or in the social media, they are just covered by hate speech. So everything has a political content, our actions, our research. So, to the extent that our research is sound and solid, we can build significant knowledge that creates an international agenda and where it has a weight. I think that is central. Let's move on to the second aspect. What about the scenario for the research that we have seen? And in a way, the scenario of this researchers' meetings, but even beyond that, because sometimes we see other material on service learning in different journals. On the one hand, this is a scenario that is very close to the subject matter. This is very good, but it's also a challenge that I would like to mention later, because our closeness sometimes prevents us from seeing more clearly. So it's important to bear that in mind. Closeness with the object of study that gives us a lot of wealth also. There's data, there's evaluation, and there's systematization. There's lots of data. And here, there's something I would like to go back to later. Much of those data, after presenting systematizations and publications, they even do not transcend to other comparative research. So sometimes we have a lot of material, a lot of data that is not then processed in order to do a proper job. Then we have theoretical and methodological frameworks that are sometimes somewhat limited in terms that there's no presentation of a theoretical framework to then see or discuss why we chose certain concepts and certain methodologies. Sometimes we have it at a secondary level, so we have to go back to that. Something that sometimes we lack is a peer review and the need that Alejandra is telling me to go faster, but it's good to share this backstage. So we need more peer reviews and more comparative studies. Other groups, other experiences. I'm tending now to read in part to facilitate the work of the interpreters. That's why I'm reading the slides. If I deviate from the slides, I'm going to confuse them a little. I'm trying to speak a little slower for the same reason. There are different methods for data collection, but we need systematizing these data collection methods. We are still falling short in that. And there's a predominance of an inductive method for analysis and qualitative strategies because we are close to the object and we are focused on that and we are moving to something more interpretativist. But we have to be more positivist as well and use studies with more data and more quantitative aspects. Although we all know that the quantitative methodology is not as neutral and as quantitative. There's always methods and forms or questions that are made that make it a little more relative. Professor Alberto Marrelli from Bologna University a few years ago preferred to call them standard and non-standard techniques because he said quantitative is not fully my thing. I mean, that neutrality is not such. Let's go to the challenges. We have to leverage on what other teams do. These meetings should be an opportunity for us to see, well, who's working on public policies? What methods are we using? Working jointly. The thing about this meeting is that, as in many cases, academically, is that we present our work, we congratulate one another, we applaud one another, but then we don't learn from the others' methods. We don't compare the methods. We should have an opportunity to do that. And now I'm going to speak at a network level. So the challenges to keep growing. I see that this is a previous version of what I had prepared. Never mind. So we have to check similar experiences. We have to use collection methods and analysis methods that others use and improve our analysis and data collection methods. And there are two different things, the collection method and the analysis method. And the categories of analysis we can use, it's important for us to validate them. And at the same time, in that sense, the old strategy of triangulation in social research is very important. I really defend that. Professor Furco, when he spoke at this webinar I mentioned, he said, we have the evidence of what our students do and the outcome, but what would happen if we checked what other students do in similar conditions to see if they reach the same result? And we don't usually consider that. So we think of our strategies, we validate them, but we need more comparative studies in that sense. And comparative among institutions and among regions. The networks might be useful for that, because certainly all the networks we're working in general, share service learning experiences, but not so much research experience. So it would be very good to compare methods of analysis, collection methods, etc. We need to go deeper into the theoretical frameworks, the state of the art, build theory that consolidates us in the international field. We need, as Boyana said, to analyze how to define and measure impact, contemplate the mid and long term. This has to do with the introduction that we heard, develop comparative studies, replicate indicators and designs. Something that I did not include here, but then I kept thinking about it. In anthropology, they speak about reflexivity, that process by which the researcher foresees in the program, the work, how much they are involved and how that will affect their analysis and conclusions. To the extent that you are aware of that subjectivity that is always in place when we are so emotional with these projects, we can also predict how to triangulate and contemplate other approaches, other documentation, other data to confirm what we are investigating. And now I'm closing, yes. I had mentioned something about the research paradigms. Let's pay attention to that before our next research. What is the paradigm that this is inserted into? And is it possible to cross this with other paradigms? Yeah, the terminology is very wide, but in general, there's a positivist paradigm that predominates in academia globally. And very often we do that. But there's also an interpretativist paradigm, ethnographic methods, the data-founded theory. Let's expand our approach when analyzing what methods to use. The ethical framework, this is something that I think is central, also has been shared by colleagues from different places. On the one hand, ethics in the task, the data collection, the consensus, respecting the voice, and also sometimes the privacy, the anonymity of the people we work with. Working more horizontally. Sometimes in some areas, based on my experience, in some areas in Buenos Aires, for instance, the researcher goes there to talk to the people in the neighborhood, they do their research, they leave, and the citizens were just an object of study. But thinking of the horizontality is a challenge. A few years ago, Antonadia Borges from Brazil shared their experiences in South Africa, how she shared the role of researcher with native women that were advocating for their indigenous lands, and they also felt researchers in this collaboration with the external researcher. Let's think of this horizontal work, and let's think of how this reciprocity can work with actors. Thinking of reproducing or transforming, activating the critical spirit in our research and in the society model we want to build. Thinking how to build knowledge from a different local perspective. I used in some approaches that are not here, oh yeah, it's here, the decolonial approach. In Latin America has a long tradition. It doesn't need to be the same. But thinking that there are identity categories that sometimes from the logic that predominates in Europe or in the US that are very good, they do not recognize. So recognizing some concepts of our own, for instance, in our Latin American societies, the weight of the mixing of the races, that requires their own categories. Otherwise, it's not understood. And just a small anecdote about census in Argentina. The census in Argentina at the end of 19th century did no longer consider the African descendants. So it was like there were no more African descendants. The history books, in many cases, no longer spoke about the presence of Afro-descendants beyond the anecdotes from the time of independence. However, there's a strong population of African descendants in Argentina. In the late 18th century, in the north of the country, 40% of the population were descendants from African immigrants, but that was denied. Only recently, now there's a day for Afro-descendants, November the 8th, and even in a bill, in the currency, in the local currency, there's one representative of that population, but that was denied. It has to do with the categories we use and the models that ignore them. So decolonial thing is not a minor thing. And this opens the dialogue among the different perspectives. Nieves, in the introduction, also referred to the dialogue between Southeast, North, etc. The dialogues among the different cultures to find wealth in the research. And the impact that we look for has to do also in terms of transforming the society we live in. Our projects have an impact. The project in architecture, in dentistry, they have an impact, and it has to do with discussing the agendas. Projects that define a country. And in that sense, what we do, and this is the final bullet point, is sometimes build a public agenda based on the soundness of our work. Good research is going to give us that certainty. Thank you.